Hi, Morean. Thank you so much for joining us today at Road the Radio. Since forming a supergroup in 2013, Alkaloid has been celebrating for defying the laws of metalverse and redefining progressive death metal. With your latest album, Bach Out of Bounds, you've taken your alchemical mastery to a new level by creating a fascinating dialogue between Baroque compositions of the god Johann Sebastian Bach and your own cosmic technical soul. We're thrilled to dive into the creative process behind this unique project. Thank you so much for being here.
Well, thank you so much for having us and for giving us the time and the attention. Un saludo cordial a todos nuestros aficionados en Colombia y en Sudamérica.
Gracias, Moren. Well, first of all, you mentioned that Bach Out of Bounds, you didn't change any of back notes, but you took maximum liberty in the arrangements. How do you strike a balance between maintaining the architectural integrity of Baroque masterpiece and it like a mad scientist virtuosity that defines Alkaloid?
Well, it's a good question. And of course, it was the first question I had to answer. Like, okay, we're supposed to play Bach. How are we going to do this? Because obviously, as Alkaloid, we had never done this. And even me, I'm a classical composer in daily life with a diploma and everything. But I realized I had never played Bach in my life until, the Alkaloid project. So, it was high time. And you are right to call him a god because, yeah, what this guy did in his life, we can only look with a telescope,
Okay, that's
from
right.
where we are. There is a fundamental difference in tasks, whether you're a composer or an arranger. As a composer, you think of everything new, like including the notes. As an arranger, you have to take the notes that are written, but you have a lot of freedom what you do with those notes. That means, there are certain rules about this, and it's good that we have these rules. And I know that, for example, you have the right to cover anything you want if you don't change the original too obviously. And usually what that means is like you can cover a song, but you cannot add your own notes to it because then it becomes another thing and then you can get a copyright dispute. Or you cover a song, but you change the lyrics, then also the author can say, hey, this is not okay because this is my music and you can play it as I wrote it, but you cannot play it in your own version just like that without asking me for permission because I made the original thing. Now, in the case of Bach, that is not really relevant because, he died in 1750. So The copyright has expired, for a long time. But we were invited to this project by a Bach festival here in Dordrecht, which is a city close by Rotterdam, where I live. And that meant not only did we have to find a way to play Bach, no, we had to play it in front of lovers of Bach's music, which, you better.
But people were thrilled about that.
Yeah, absolutely. And look, for me, being between both worlds always, it was a natural thing to embrace, of course. And it's not the first time I did such a crossover project between metal and classical music. Like I did 2 Wagner projects with our previous band, Non-Euclid, and, different collaborations. But the thing is that the first problem in this whole concept was what to do with Bach's notes because there's no way to improve them because obviously, nobody's going to be a better Bach than Bach himself.
So that's right.
And the other thing is that many masterpieces will work no matter what you play them on. And I have witnessed this a couple of times, because I'm lucky to know a lot of amazing musicians here in the Netherlands and abroad. And my work as a composer means that I'm now more than 3 decades that I've been writing for the best players around. So I know what a good player can do no matter the instrument. So I know a recorder player, this shitty little cheap thing that every kid has to learn and everybody hates. Well, there's a guy here called, from no, but seriously, this guy who's been in the Netherlands for many years from Venezuela, his name is Jorge Isaac, and he
Yeah.
sounds like Jimi Hendrix on those things,
Oh, right.
So it, don't get deterred by the fact that he's a recorder player, because you have never heard a recorder like the one he plays. And it happened also with a remarkable experience during a conductor's workshop. They did The Rite of Spring by Stravinsky, which I think is the best piece ever written. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
Bach being Bach, but that piece, like,
No, I know.
it's on the same level.
Yeah.
So it's a piece for large orchestra, and you think that the power of the piece comes also from this huge setup and all these instruments. But in this conducting class, they had a string quintet, so 2 violins, viola, cello, double bass.
Like a baroque ensemble. Okay.
Exactly, but a small
Yeah.
group of musicians, and they played the Sache. They played all the notes that are written there, and it was amazing to see that even with these 6 people, the piece still had all its power. And then you have to conclude, well, the power, of course, it's also in the orchestration, but it is mainly in the notes, which are so incredibly good. So knowing this, I knew that if I respect the notes of Bach, they will probably still work, no matter how I put, how I divide them over different instruments, and no matter what I do with the sound. So I felt quite free to just listen to the music and trust my intuition and my ears, what they say we can do with these notes. And it was different for each of the Bach pieces that we did. Like we did 2 things. We did the full concerto for harpsichord in D minor, which is a piece that consists of 3 parts of like 8-9 minutes. There are only the first 2 parts on the live album, but in the concerts we also played the 3rd part. So the first part is a fast movement, and it's also the first track in the album. And who knows the piece
You mean the Adagio, isn't it?
No, the Allegro.
The Allegro. Sorry.
The first fast part, which we start only with the band, and then at a certain point the strings come in, and then we start playing together. But well, that's a fast piece with loads and loads and loads of 16th notes. Of course, fantastic notes, lovely thematic material and stuff. But it starts and it just goes on and on and on and on and on for like 8-9 minutes. Well, what did that remind me of? Of course, of the more virtuosic metal styles, and also really in death metal, even if the songs are chromatic and sort of ugly harmonies and whatever, as soon as the guitar solo comes, most guitar players will switch to very classical major minor harmonies, and the ones who have studied also classical music a little bit and who know music in general, they will immediately see the parallel between the 2. So that was my first angle, that I thought, like, okay, this fast movement from the harpsichord concerto, that's already kind of death metal if you add the drums. The drums were the most difficult thing to solve, because of course in Bach's scores there are no drums.
There's no much percussion.
A kind of nothing. I mean, maybe in a bigger work, maybe a timpano here and there, but for the rest,
but not so much.
How the rhythm is established in the music is a very different story in Bach's time than for us, because if you have a drummer who puts down the beat, well, the rest of the instruments are pretty free. Because the beat is there. If you don't have a drummer, the instruments that play the melodies and the accompaniment also have to play the rhythm in a way, because there is no percussionist. So in Bach's scores, the parts are already very rhythmical, and if you just add drums to that, it becomes a little bit boring. So I say I didn't change Bach's notes, and that is true, but I did take the liberty to add, for example, a little bit of rhythm to a long note. So where in Bach it's bum, dee, dee, bum, dee, dee, bum, dee, dee. I made out of it, which I think, it's not really a change in the composition. It's just a slightly more rhythmical interpretation of the notes that were there. In the second piece on the album, the second movement of this harpsichord concerto, which is the Adagio, I had a different idea, because the original is a very quiet kind of middle movement where everybody relaxes before the third movement comes, and you have all these 16ths again. And the dynamics are low, the notes are long. It's a beautiful theme, but I was pleasantly reminded of doom metal when I heard the notes. So I thought, there's a chance there to maybe turn this instrumental piece of music into a song. Because, of course, also the project is about exposing maybe the more standard metal listeners to the music of Bach as much as the Bach fans to metal, that maybe once they hear it and get to know that it's not just noise, but that there's a lot behind it.
Yeah.
So I thought, can I turn this into doom metal? That was more or less easily done. I mean, we just basically play the notes. I mean, of course, I arranged it in the details and stuff. There's always details in my music, but in principle, that was simple. Okay, we don't play boom, 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 but we go boom, boom, boom. I mean, that was rather clear, but
that part was amazing. How you handle that.
And I mean, the only notes I changed is that sometimes at the end of a phrase, I will add like a dirty chord. So I play the note, but with a tritone or something to make it a bit more metal. But that has more to do with sound than really,
But tritone was banned at that time, no?
Yeah, but still, you can find a lot of it in Bach's music. It was more like a guideline, not really a hard rule. And how can you banish musical intervals? I mean,
no.
But so then came the question: okay, vocals. What can I do while remaining faithful to Bach? So what I did was I chose not the solo part of the harpsichord. That went to the bass guitar, which is another thing that I thought that hasn't been done before. And we have a fantastic bass player with a classical background from a classical music family who likes a challenge and who likes to be featured as well. So, he has all these high fiddly bits while the rest remains in the doom metal. But I took the string accompaniment, which is slower notes, more like the chords, and I thought, what if I double those notes with the singers? Because we had two wonderful sopranos as extra
amazing
luxury part of this project. So why not use them? And then it was just a question which text to use, and I chose for a poem from a German poet from the time, Andreas Gryphius, which is called "Es ist alles eitel," meaning all is vanity, which also became the title of the movement.
Okay.
Which is a poem about the way that everything passes, basically the mortality of anything earthy. And since it's a poem from the time that fits with the spirit of Baroque, because it's used as an example what the whole Baroque epoch was about, I translated it or I used bits and pieces. And again, it's old, so I'm allowed to to fool around with it. But I was very pleased that this trick did help to turn this movement more into a song a little bit. And I don't know what Bach would think about it, but I tried to be faithful to the spirit of the time, even though I was screwing around with it.
I think he's pleased, whatever he is. Okay, let's translate that. No, I'm joking. Okay. I'm joking, though. Okay. Well, Morean, this project aims to transfuse the soul of Bach into Alkaloid's own creations. Could you explain technical process using Bach's specific techniques to write a brand new Alkaloid song rather than simply covering this work?
Absolutely. First of all, as I said, nobody will ever be a better Bach than Bach. So me trying to write a piece in his style is setting myself up for failure. And plus, why would I create something that sounds like somebody else? So my approach was exactly what you said, to use Bach's composition techniques that are all over everything he wrote, but to apply them to our own harmonic, melodic, rhythmical language. So concretely, that means the music of the Middle Ages, Baroque and Renaissance music is characterized by polyphony. And that means that you have several parts in the music that are of equal importance. So one instrument will start with a melody, and then a second instrument comes in later with the same melody, while the first instrument, plays something else. And like this, you get like a canonic succession of always the same thing coming in, but changing every time because the previous instrument will have to do something else. And like this, you can build cathedrals out of notes, which are still all built from kind of the same theme. And in music, it's always important that you have a good balance between new things and things you already know, meaning like you have to repeat things because otherwise it's just, random and you get a headache from it. But if it's always the same thing repeating without anything changing, it's also boring. So anything you write is always going to be in between those two extremes. And these polyphonic composition techniques allow you to control how much material you need because you use always the same themes again. So that means it's not an overload of too much material that has nothing to do with each other anymore, that you get some mess that goes nowhere. But at the same time, you can do a lot with this material. And that's the idea behind it. You get always the same things, always the same melodies. And if you listen well to the piece that I wrote for the new piece I wrote for this project, which is called Haunter of the Void.
Haunter of the Void, yeah.
10-minute piece for everybody on stage. You can hopefully clearly hear how the same elements are coming back again and again, but every time they come back, something different happens to it. So, sometimes we play them soft, sometimes loud, sometimes we imitate each other, sometimes they are, developed harmonically, or if you have a handful of main motifs, I wrote them in a way that you can combine them, that pretty much any of them will fit on top of any of the other ones. And then according to how you combine them, you get different parts and different music and different sections with different feelings. So that was how I approached that part of it. So I used the techniques, but not the aesthetics, let's say, because you can use this technique with any notes. It doesn't matter if it's tonal or atonal, if it's modern or old, or if it's some Arabian scale or some Indonesian gamelan notes or whatever. You can do this trick with anything you have. So of course, if you apply this to harmony that is different to the normal classical harmonies or Western harmonies, which is what I like to do, I like to make my own chords. I like to go beyond the boring old major minor stuff. You can have something that is technically faithful to Bach, but is still very much your own thing.
Okay, well, let's talk a little bit about Haunter of the Void. That is your new track, your brand new track on this awesome project. You explore a story of a digitizer brain shot into space from a locked Earth. How does this specific science fiction concept connect with the cosmic things that the band has been building since its inception?
On the surface, it's a standalone thing that has nothing to do with any of the other space sagas that are going on in the lyrics. But the inspiration tends to come from the same place. And it's two things, really. I mean, the thing is, I didn't have any preconceived ideas of what this song would have to be about. I wrote the music with some idea in mind about the story, and then I wrote the lyric and the story, but independent of anything else that we have done. But what connects it to the other space stuff is, first of all, my love for space. And, I'm an escapist at heart. And since I was a little child, I was fascinated by anything that has to do with spaceships and planets and black holes and whatever. So, being the lyricist of this band, I'm just enjoying that I can just go there and nobody stops me, so that is why it's a very obvious subject, let's say. And of course, the subject is the universe. So, it fits many different stories. And the second thing is more emotionally what it's about for me. And it's about the question, how does a human mind deal with isolation and with hopelessness? And so the scenario, which is that I mean, say that you can digitize a brain, that you just have like a little organic component, and for the rest, it's just a chip or something that you can put like in a little tin can, and you can shoot that into space. It's a lot easier than shooting a fully grown organisms into space with systems that have to sustain them. So if we want to really reach something far away in space, we're going to have to do that. We're going to have to sort of store what we are on the smallest possible thing and then turn it off for millions or even billions of years until it arrives somewhere. And then that thing has to wake up and make sense of wherever it landed. And this moment of waking up and being somewhere like super far from everything
where the hell I am?
Nothing about. Yeah, exactly. That was the emotion I found interesting. So that's how the story also starts, by this thing waking up. And there are in space, as far as we know, there are voids, meaning areas, like gigantic areas with very few stars. We don't know what created these voids, but of course, I wanted to put everything to 11, so the point lands in the middle of the biggest void, which we know about, which is called Boötes void. And how I see it in front of me is that there's just like some, whether it's a moon or an asteroid or just some little rock somewhere that he sort of bumps into and somehow manages to survive the impact. And then because it touched something, the brain wakes up. And it goes like, okay, what's going on here? First of all, why am I here? What is all this? It's gonna take a while to figure out, like, oh yeah, I was something back then in a totally different universe. And then having to deal with what is in front of you, which is just a bit of dirt. So assuming that in this little spaceship, there are a couple of little tools with which this soul, let's call it, or this mind can build itself a new body, like molecule by molecule, this very tedious work that is going to take thousands of years. But this soul is then trying to answer the question, like, yeah, why should I even start with this if it's so hopeless? I know I'm alone. I know I will never have contact again with anything else that lives. The world I knew is hopelessly far away and long gone. And even if I manage to survive on this stupid little rock, what am I gonna do? What for? It's gonna be a humongous, frustrating work to build myself a body and a system that I can survive and slowly eat this stupid piece of rock. But is it really worth it? Should I even start because of how fucked up everything is? And well, he gets to the conclusion that yes, I might as well. I mean, lines like, if I can't fly, then I have to crawl. It all expresses this thing, like, what do you do? What do you decide to do if you are faced with overwhelming hopelessness of your situation? And of course, that can be symbolic, but the emotion itself is, it can be.
No, emotion is universal. So.
But exactly. But I think, maybe people cannot really relate to this brain in a tin can thing, but maybe they can relate to this feeling of hopelessness and how to deal with it and how to motivate yourself to still go on, And that's where the survival instinct kicks in, because, I mean, existence can be horrible, right? And we all know it, and some of us know it like all too well. Not me, but I know people who have dealt with crap that would kill me, but the question is it better to have a horrible existence or to have no existence at all? And in that, it's just my intuition telling me that it's better to exist, even though it's, a lot of suffering and it's hopeless and frustrating and unfair and whatever, than to not even be there at all. Because, I mean, of course, if you're not there, there's nobody who minds it. Nobody has a problem because there's nobody, obviously.
The old paradox, if a tree falls on the desert and nobody hears it, it really falls? It really existed? No.
Yeah. Well, that would be the solipsistic angle. Like if I can't see it, it doesn't exist. I mean, there's something to be said about that from a psychological viewpoint, but I like to think that even if I'm not there, that the world still exists, you know. But yeah, this was what was behind it, this realization that however down you feel and however hopeless everything is, and however much your thoughts tell you, man, I want to leave this life because I can't stand it anymore. I think underneath that is something more basic and more profound, like biological almost. Everything that lives basically wants to keep on living. That's hardwired into every single whatever bit of DNA that we have. We cannot really get away from it unless things are so bad that obviously you choose to end your life or whatever. I mean, that exists, and I think it's completely legitimate. Your life is your own, and nobody gets to tell you what to do with it, right? It's I mean, it's the only thing you actually own is your body and your existence. So, you know, everybody's free to decide to leave their life. But I think for most of us, ultimately, this realization, shit, if I kill myself, then I have absolutely nothing. Now I have a bunch of crap that I don't want, that is horrible, you know, but I'm gonna die anyway, right? Everything dies at some point. So why not write it out? Because you don't know what's gonna be tomorrow. You know, maybe it's gonna be also terrible. Maybe it's never gonna get better. But in the case that it does get better at some point, or you find something that you like, or you find something that works, or you know, some window opens that shows your perspective out of this hopelessness, I think most of us would choose to continue to exist. And this is a profound power we have in ourselves. But I think we can only access this power if we are really desperate, because luckily our lives are not that terrible that we are faced with this question every day. But when we do, there is kind of a salvation in the biology that tells you, no, keep on living because you don't know what's going to happen. And I thought in all this kind of absurd scenario and with all the, you know, the hopelessness of life as a subject, I thought that's kind of a positive message, even though it's not glorious. No, it's not. I mean, the narrator doesn't go like, yeah, now I've had a breakthrough and life is good. No, it's just like, okay, I'm just gonna muddle on until I'm not there anymore. But still, it's positive.
Okay, okay. Well, uh, having performed this set at the festival like Bach Festival and November Music, you know that audiences went crazy for it. In your view, what is about Bach Baroque style that remains so relevant and resonant to a modern metal audience?
Well, first and foremost, just the quality of the notes. And I mean with this, the following thing, which I deal with every day as a composer. We have 12 notes, different notes, 12 pitches. They're in different octaves, but basically you have 12 different Lego bricks from which you have to build everything you have to build. I know there are other ways, and some people use microtonal things, or they are not busy with scales, but more with frequencies or whatever. You can make all kinds of music outside of this tonal system of 12 chromatic pitches, but that's rather niche. Like none of these styles ever make it to the mainstream, because we are used to music being those 12 notes, or more often just 7 out of those 12 notes, which would be the white keys of a piano. If you take away the black keys, well, the overwhelming majority of music is actually just that. But it also means that everybody is using these notes, and the more music there is, the harder it gets to think of something new with always these same notes. And I mean, everybody who writes, you know, more than just the occasional song on a guitar knows the same thing. Like, which bloody note should I start with now? This one again. Okay, it's gonna be an E. Oh, let's try something else. Oh, let's write an F. Well, already that's like rules out 99% of all guitarists who never think of, hey, I could start on a different note also, because then it becomes different. But the problem is that it's very hard to understand why some composers have the ability to combine a couple of those same old bricks into something that is so much better than what everybody else does with them. Stupid example maybe, but you know, a lot of pop music has the same 3-4 chords. So everybody uses those chords, but still, some songs are legendary evergreens that everybody knows and loves, even though they are made with the same boring 3 zombie chords like everything else. And then if you try to analyze that from a music theory perspective, it's very hard, because you cannot say like, okay, he did this or he did that or whatever. It's the same chords, but just in a slightly different order or a slightly different succession than everybody else does. And that one version of it, that one permutation out of the endless permutations that are possible, somehow is better music than all the other versions. And I am kind of happy after, decades of studying music, and I went to the conservatory, everything. I really like music theory and all the theoretical knowledge behind what makes music, but I am relieved that it's not possible to distill like a rule or a simple formula that will lead you to this masterpiece. No, the reason why those 3 chords with this composer are so much better than the same 3 notes with everybody else, it's a mystical thing. It's an absolute mystery. Wow. And it requires us to be human. It requires us to feel, and it requires us to employ something else than just rational thinking in what we compose. And I mean, I'm writing music every day, but I also don't know. I also have to sit there and just go through the permutations and try out a million things and maybe write 50 riffs before there is one that I'm thinking, okay, this is good enough to actually put in a song to be released. And frustrating as that is, I mean, of course we would like a shortcut, but it's great that it doesn't exist, because it also means that the fucking AI generated music can never get there, because it's, that's what makes it not music, in my opinion. It's an imitation of music that works on the surface for like 3 seconds, but nobody has shown me an AI riff that is better than a real riff, or stuff like that.
It's absolutely right.
This mystery at the heart of what makes good music good is what will save us also from this automated garbage production, because it takes everything you have. And even if you're educated, if you have the time, if you have the chance, and even if you have the talent, which each of us has some level of talent, and I don't know if I have, more or less than other people, but even if you bring all that to the table and you have great teachers and everything is there, it is still a completely foggy, murky path to finding the good riff, because it's a mystery that doesn't want to be like exploited and just harvested.
It's
just like
that. kind of genius, about
exactly.
inner
And
genius, something else.
Maybe if we develop a lot further, at some point we will crack it and we will see like, okay, this was the trick, because if you put these frequencies in this ratio together, then it'll trigger some synaptic whatever that will, help to make you happy and to produce serotonin. But we are very far away from such a level of understanding even our brains, let alone music and art. So I would say to take the long road back to your question. I mean, sorry, but it's
no, it's okay. It's okay. It has been a pleasure hearing you about it. It's okay.
It's complex questions to answer also, and I have an opinion about them. But so to answer the question, what makes Bach's music still relevant to this day? It's just how good it is. If you look for a compilation of Bach's biggest hits, that I couldn't find it now, but I once saw a video on YouTube where somebody just took the 20 most famous Bach themes and put them all in a row. Just that, not the full piece, just the themes. And you go like, damn, oh yeah, that one and that one. Oh, this is also Bach and this is also Bach. And I've heard this in 1,000 different places and this and that. It is truly immortal music in that sense. It is timeless. It is, as good and powerful now as it was back then, even though music has changed completely. And, but in his time, he was one of the, let's say, main creators of music that was, available in where he was and at his time. Nowadays you have a million different things. You can have a very rich life as a music listener without ever hearing Bach, because there's so much other stuff. But still, even in this time, the fact that every Easter his passions are performed all over the Western world, and I'm sure even outside of the Western world, the fact that every piano student will have to play Bach, everybody who picks up a Western instrument at some point is going to have to play Bach. That speaks volumes, and it just says the music has never lost its relevance just because it's so good. And it's not that the police decided, oh no, Bach stays. No, it's the listeners who decided, like, this is awesome, and the musicians too. This is awesome. We have to keep this. So in a way, Bach's music is creating its own survival strategy just by still being amazing. And you can enter in, from a lot of different angles, from a technical viewpoint, from a historical viewpoint, from whatever, and in all these angles, it's going to come out as fantastic music. But the mere fact that we still revere it, and that, pieces of wood get emotional when they hear certain Bach things, well, that really tells you everything, and that's all you have to know. And the rest is just details.
Well, Morean, thank you so much for being here. I know today is a great day, so I think you're excited about it. So I wish you the best for this release. I hope you get thousands of copies, and everybody here in this world that appreciates Bach music also appreciate your great album that is really great.
Thank you so much.
Really so much.
Nice to hear.
Last and not less important, I would like you to have a little greeting for us in Spanish, if you
of
would.
Course.
We are called Roll the Radio.
Roll the Radio.
If you want to have a little Roll the Radio, yeah. So if you wanna give us a little greeting for our fans, it will be great. Thank you so much.
Hola gente, soy Morean de Alkaloid y estáis escuchando a Roll the Radio.
Okay, thank you so much, Morean.
¿Estaba más o menos correcto?
Perfecto.
Sí, ok.
Perfecto, no, fantástico. Y hablas español, fantástico, de verdad. ¿Tienes ese acento como argentino? ¿Conoces algún argentino?
Bueno, en realidad es una mezcla de todo, porque yo antes era guitarrista flamenco cuando era joven, entonces así entraba también con el castellano y primero aprendí en Andalucía. Así que ya es distinto a los de Madrid. El fa no lo hago, ¿no? Y bueno, después en Holanda compartí la casa con amigos mexicanos y todo eso, entonces hubo este ángulo y bueno, viajaba mucho por España y todo, pero también hice un viaje muy largo por toda Chile casi. Y el acento chileno y el acento andaluz están más o menos cercanos. Sí. Y luego,
¿O sea que cachai?
Sí, bueno, se comen los S porque no hay agua. Pero los más difíciles a seguir son los cubanos. Y tengo amigos cubanos que puedo seguir. Entonces me da mucho orgullo. Pero por eso ya no pienso cuando hablo español con todos fallos y todo, pero creo que será por eso que es un poco difícil distinguir de dónde
sí, claro.
Lo he sacado.
Pero dicen que el de nosotros es como el más neutro, pero pues no sabemos.
Sí, y el acento mexicano también. En México es más el que todo siempre tiene un significado sucio, oculto. Pero aquí
también es. Me imagino. De hecho, nosotros somos el único país del mundo que convirtió una enfermedad en una vulgaridad. De verdad. Aquí,
wow.
Sí, en serio. No te la digo porque es un poco. Pero sí.
Pues
sí, o sea, no es lo mismo decir hijo de tales, la enfermedad venérea, hijo de tales, eso es otro cuento.
Qué bien.
O sea, multiplica como por 100 el efecto vulgar,
Qué bien.
La
qué
ofensa.
Bien.
Okay.
Yo soy de la Bavaria, en el sur de Alemania, y somos así también. Somos
Sí.
unos campesinos de la hostia.
Sí,
gente muy cruda.
Sí, no, nosotros es que hemos tenido una vida difícil, entonces hemos tratado de unir, hemos tratado de sobrepasar la vida difícil que hemos tenido con humor y pues algo
Sí,
sale.
pero el humor es lo último que se va, ¿eh?
Ajá.
Así
Vale,
que
Morean.
sin humor no hay vida. Pero
Claro.
bueno, un placer enorme, ¿eh?
De
y
verdad, muchas
ojalá
gracias a
hasta
ti.
otra, ¿no?
No,
Y
sí, o sea,
bueno,
y deseo lo mejor del mundo, grandes éxitos con este álbum en vivo, que yo sé que no es nada fácil, pero lo que han hecho ha sido maravilloso, sublime, así que lo mejor del mundo.
pues
Y
muchísimas gracias.
gracias también a Season of Mist que nos ha permitido tener esta entrevista y ha sido de verdad un placer.